guys, welcome to part 2 of the analytical response instruction. We're going to be working on the homework assignment for Thursday. And so if you haven't already watched this video down here, this is the home page that is explaining the analytical response assignment guide. You want to do that first so that this makes sense. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the homework assignment that's due on Thursday. All right, so what I really want you to do is very simple. I just want you, this is just like the previewing reading guides that we did for the other course readings that we did for the report. So just copy and paste from previewing all the way down here and give your answers. And it should be pretty straightforward. Right now, we're just getting an idea. We're getting familiar with the document. One of the things I'd like to go through with you guys, though, is just how to tell the difference, number 6, between a main idea and a supporting detail. I think this will be really helpful to you, and also just kind of walk you through the assignment. Okay, so remember, you can get a copy of the document here, okay? And you should be able to print it from there. So we're going to pretend that I did that, and we're going to start right here, okay? And I'm just gonna make that a little bit bigger. Okay, so What is Happiness was originally published in 1964 in a literary magazine called the Saturday Review. Because it was published a long time ago, you're gonna see some references, cultural references that you may not understand. Don't worry about it. And you also may see some kind of antiquated wording in this section that I also don't want you to worry about. You'll kind of see in some more examples I'll have posted later for you guys to look at that this first paragraph really is his introduction. It's Charity's introduction. He's really kind of starting with this idea of Americans having happiness issued with their birth certificates, and then talking about the idea of being offered a hunting license but not game. So he's really right here talking about American value systems, that happiness is seen as a birthright. And that's an allusion to the Declaration of Independence that says one of our inalienable rights is the pursuit of happiness. So he's kind of starting that way because he's identifying an audience here and asking them right off the bat to think about that idea. You know, is it the right to pursue happiness? Is it kind of a right? Okay. And then he makes a little question here. It may be that we are issued a hunting license but offered no game. So what does he mean by that? Well, for my hunters out there, you know that you need to go out into the forest and try to shoot pheasant or deer. You need to get a license to hunt, right? And you can get that license, but just because you have a license doesn't mean you're going to actually be able to catch anything. So that's what they mean by offered no game. So you get the hunting license, right? But you don't necessarily get the deer or the pheasant, just because you have the hunting license, if that makes sense. All right, so we're not going to worry too much more about this paragraph. But I'm going to kind of show you the first major idea. So what is happiness is it's an argument of definition, and we use arguments of definition all the time in modern times, because we sometimes think the way we have understood an idea, like happiness or something else, is not the way we should continue to understand it. We should change. For example, the same-sex marriage law started as an argument of definition. Same-sex couples wanted the definition of marriage to change from one man and one woman, which was the traditional definition, to a more definition that just said two people could get married. And that really changed how we view marriage now, because it was a reflection of the time that the definition needed to change. So there's a good example of that. All right, so as we go through, we're going to start right here. I'm just going to start right here. We do, however, seem to be dedicated to the idea of buying our way to happiness. We shall have made it to heaven when we possess enough. So here you can really see Chiardi is introducing his first main idea, the idea that we, whoever we are, okay, and that's a kind of a, you might think about we Americans, right, are dedicated to the idea of buying our way to happiness. And this is the first kind of main idea Chiardi really uses. Okay, then he says this kind of funny thing. He's being ironic here. We shall have made it to heaven when we possess enough. Remember, when somebody's being ironic in their speech, it means they mean the opposite of what they say. So he doesn't really think that it will lead us to heaven when we buy our way to happiness, or that possessions will get us to heaven. He's being ironic here, so he doesn't mean this. He means the opposite. And so he's kind of poking some fun at this view of buying our way to happiness. So this is where he starts this discussion, and it runs all the way down from this on the first page right to the top of the second page. Okay, so this whole discussion is about this idea of buying our way to happiness. We're calling that materialism. Buying your way to happiness, or buying, thinking that buying is a good thing, is called materialism. And so that's what he's talking about here. So we're looking kind of at these examples. So he says, how does buying our way to happiness work? Well, he talks about the forces of American commercialism and the fact that advertising is one of Americans' major industries, still is. And he says that advertisements exist not to satisfy desires, but to create them. That means when we see an advertisement, it's supposed to make us want stuff, right? So we think if we buy that, then we'll be satisfied, until what happens? The next ad comes around and maybe we need that next thing, or maybe we need a different thing. Okay, so this is kind of his second related main idea to this whole section on materialism, right? Buying our way, and commercialism, and advertising. And if you look down here, he has a special word for this, and he calls it the happiness market. So this is his idea of American materialism delivered through what he calls the happiness market. And remember, what he means by that is commercialism and advertising, right? That kind of cycle of watching an advertisement, which creates a desire, okay? And then we buy something, right? Buying our way to happiness. And then we go back and see another ad that makes us want more stuff. And so we buy. And so we're in a constant kind of a loop, right? A loop that always keeps us wanting more. And so that's the kind of the idea here. So how does he illustrate this main idea about American materialism? Well, he does it with two main kind of examples. So we are taught that to possess is to be happy, and then we are made to want. So that's kind of what he means, okay? We are even told is our duty to want. So here's the first example, okay? And it's about the car industry. So he's talking about the car dealers. So what do you think this example is showing about the nature of we are taught that to possess is to be happy, and then we are made to want? So he's really questioning that with this example. Read it very carefully and see how he's questioning that. And then he has a second example from women's magazines, okay? And he talks about the magazines that kind of help women fulfill this dream of perfect beauty. So he talks about the dream of perfect beauty and what that looks like, right? And then he talks about in the back of the magazine, you have to buy all this stuff that's going to give you the dream of perfect beauty. Again, I want you to notice the verbal irony. Okay, remember, verbal irony is when we write something, but we don't mean that, we mean the opposite, right? So look at the humor that he's using to poke fun at this idea of buying our way to happiness. He's making fun of this idea, okay? So usually when people make fun of it, they don't of an idea, they don't agree with it. So just keep that in mind, okay? How do I know that? Well, look down here. He says obviously, so which is kind of a obviously word, rude word. No half sane person can be completely persuaded by either such poetry or such pharmacopoeia and orthopedics. I'm asking you guys to look this one up, but really quickly, it means kind of the medicine and medical devices that we use to keep ourselves healthy. And so this line right here is very, very ironic, almost bordering on sarcasm, right? And then he says, this is all the fault of the happiness market, and not just the happiness market, but of all of the Americans who are its customers, right now, because they believe in this dream of perfect beauty or perfect happiness. And so this is the place where we need to go to look at Charity's thesis statement, and it's all the way down here on the second page, kind of in the middle of this, and it's this big set of sentences here. Now, you guys cannot have a thesis statement that is 3 long sentences. You're not allowed to, because you guys are writing academic prose. And academic prose says, no, your introduction has a thesis in it, and it's the last sentence in your introduction paragraph. Remember, though, that Chiardi's not writing an academic piece. He's writing a personal essay, okay, for a literary magazine. So this is a different genre, okay, than what you're writing. You're writing an academic essay, and so it's going to look a little different. But let's just take a look at the thesis statement here, because I think it's really revealing. So here we are with the idea of happiness will not sit still for easy definition. That means he thinks it's hard to define the idea of happiness. And if you think about it, I think you'll find the same thing. So he says, what I'm going to do is set some extremes and work toward the middle. Okay, so what does that mean? So let's see what his extremes are. He says happiness as acquisitive and competitive, like he just talked about up here, is the materialistic extreme. So there's idea number 1, right? And remember, he doesn't think that materialism is the right answer. We can tell because of his tone, okay? Then he says to think of the idea as one senses in, say, a holy man of India will do to set the spiritual extreme. So there's the spiritual extreme as well. Okay, and I want you guys to really think about this. If you imagine a continuum, a line with an arrow on one side and an arrow on the other side going all the way here and reaching around, you will see what he means by extremes, okay? And so you have extreme materialism and extreme spiritualism over here, okay? But remember, he wants us to work in toward the middle. So we have extremes and then something that we're finding in the middle. So that's the best he can do. So the best definition that we see is going to be something that is in the middle of the 2 extremes. Okay? And so that should help you understand what he's talking about as he goes through the rest of the essay. And I'm going to leave you guys to do that. If you guys need help, as always, do reach out to me via email.